take candy from strangers? Well, to me that's what a lot of our current food system is where we do not know what is in the foods that we're telling everybody, don't worry, it's okay to eat. And so that, to me, is why we need local food production. We need to know where our food is coming from. So thus was born the Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food movement, otherwise known as the local food movement. I think I love being in a room full of people engaged in agriculture in one way or the other. And I like to ask this question usually with a lot of non-agricultural professionals, but it'll be really interesting to see with this group of folks, especially based on Shannon's showings of that survey. How many of you are raising kids or have raised your children on a farm? Raise them high and proud. This is an awesome thing, I think. Okay, wonderful. How many of you were raised on a farm? Amazing. That is an amazing showing of hands. How many of you have had parents who grew up on a farm? All right. What about your grandparents? I can finally raise my hand on this one. Okay. Great-grandparents, if you haven't already raised your hand, I'm sure everybody in this room would raise their hand. So it's really no secret that the American farmer is becoming an endangered species. We now have the average age of the American farmer is 57 years old, and farming is such a minute part of how most people make their occupations that it's not even listed on the U.S. Census anymore. We have less than 1% of our country's occupations, people's occupations being farming. So, hence the local food movement. This image was created as a result of a high school teacher in Ames, Iowa, who decided to have his students really explore where their food is coming from. So they're actually going out to a farm. You can tell they're raising beef there, grass-fed, to find out where their food is coming from. People want to know who the face is behind their plate. And one of the reasons why I think local food is so important is because until we have localized food production for everybody, I don't think we're going to get to a point where we can have real food security. And the USDA defines that as when all people at all times have access to sufficient, safe, nutritious food to maintain a healthy and active life. I also firmly believe that if we're going to have food, in order to have food security, we need to have land security. And that's just like we saw with fewer and fewer people actually actively farming. We need more farmers on the land, and that's only achievable by enabling more folks to have access to sufficient protected fertile land to maintain a healthy and active livelihood. That's a definition that the USDA has not defined yet. I just put that together. So why is it important to keep farms in production and keep food grown locally? Well, it's actually where a large majority of a lot of fresh, healthy foods, such as fruits, vegetables, dairy, poultry, and eggs, are produced currently in the urban fringe. And each year, America loses more than 1 million acres of farmland. Now, that means that over the course of this talk, we're going to lose a minimum of 20 acres of farmland just while I'm speaking right now. So, not only to create more food security, but also we know that farms are important for much more beyond in order to feed people. They also are generating revenue for our economy. They're also a lot less expensive than a lot of the expensive infrastructure that we're putting up. It's really a loss to the entire community. So I like to say, okay, what are the top, what can make a strong local food system? Profitability, very important. I don't think there's a person in this room to disagree that in order for the local food system to thrive, we actually need profitable local farms. And when I say profitable, I don't just mean the bottom dollar on the cash balance sheet. We also need our soils to be profitable. We actually need to be building healthy topsoil. We need partnerships. We need to not dichotomize, the organic sector over here and the large-scale conventional sector over here. We need to actually partner and bridge and create more dialogue. We need people, obviously. I think that's been one of the largest tragedies in agriculture that we've seen over the last several decades, is that the farms have fewer and fewer people actually operating them. And we need rural communities that are robust and actually have the infrastructure maintained to actually be able to process that food and bring it to the people. We need political will, and we need to plan for it. So at EarthDance, we work with a lot of beginning farmers, and a lot of beginning farmers are looking for land to farm. In the meantime, we know that there's a lot of people retiring from farmers who are looking for what is going to happen to their land. So this is a huge asset to agriculture, but it's also a huge expense. So there's amazing partnerships that can be built between beginning farmers and retiring farmers, where we can find successors without going through the expense of waiting until it is inherited by children who have no interest in the farm and then actually sell off. I think that's one of the saddest things we see, is when there's one child that wants to keep the farm going, but they're not able to even afford to buy out their other siblings, and so the land becomes lost to development. Now, I want to show you a scene. I don't know if anyone had a chance to watch it. Did anyone get a chance to watch the video? We just sent it out yesterday afternoon, so we're going to show that right now. It's a 5-minute video that introduces you to EarthDance, which is in Ferguson. I should probably just leave it on that note. So a little bit more about EarthDance and where we come from, where we're located, why I'm involved in this. So this woman here on the far left is Caroline Miller. She married Al Miller when, I don't know exactly how old she was, in her early 20s. She was from Ferguson. Al was a third generation in his family to farm at the Mueller Organic Farm, which is was once over 200 acres and gradually became 14. I met Al and Caroline when I was 15 years old on one visit to that farm, and it made such a lasting impression that I always was concerned about what was going to happen to that farm when Al and Caroline passed on. After meeting another gentleman at the Ferguson Farmers Market who was just renting an acre of that farm, I approached him and said, hey, I have done farming in other parts of the country and world, but I always wanted to farm on this particular piece of ground in Ferguson because of its amazing legacy. And I said, okay, well, I pay in sugar snap peas, and that was enough for me at that time. And I started volunteering there, and it started to dawn on me that, even though this gentleman was actively farming 1 acre of it, the farm had a whole lot more potential than that. And so I started EarthDance really to keep that farm in production. This is Colleen and I at the very first fundraiser for EarthDance to get us started, to literally get ourselves some seed funding, presenting this sign for the farm to commemorate Caroline and Al's lifelong commitment to the fact that health begins in the soil. So this is just kind of a field map of an aerial view of the farm, and this is celebrating Caroline's 90th birthday in her kitchen. She passed on in 2010, and thankfully in 2012, EarthDance was able to acquire the property. This is, if you look at the county assessor's office view of our region, this is what it looks like. So we're literally talking about this area right here, as you can probably clearly see, that we're thankfully going to keep in agricultural production into perpetuity. Some of the 5 main functions of what we do at EarthDance. Education is first and foremost. We call ourselves an organic farm school because we run a farm and garden apprenticeship program to train new growers in these methods. production. We wouldn't be able to train people very well if we weren't showing by example how you can actually grow a lot of food. We grew over 20,000 pounds of fresh produce on just over 2 acres last year. So that's a lot of food, giving a lot of actual nutrition to people in our community. Farmland stewardship, we not only have preserved this 14 acres, but we're hopefully inspiring others to actually focus on farmland preservation. We do a lot in the community with regards to developing unique partnerships, everything from bringing young kids out to the farm and partnering them with Oasis senior volunteers to actually learn about healthy eating. And we do outreach and advocacy. We do speaking. We go to public events and talk about what our mission is. Our mission, I should mention, EarthDance sustainably grows food, farmers, and community, one small farm at a time, through hands-on education and delicious experiences. So this is a shot. This is shows how much we try to demonstrate that it requires farming in all kinds of weather. This is March of 2011 when we had our very first day, our field walk on the farm to introduce our apprentices to farming. And of course, in March of that year, mid-March, there was snow on the ground, but we still did our introductory field walk in March of 2011 with this group of people. We have about 25 to 30 apprentices do the farm each year. This is just a snapshot. This is actually later in the day. There would have been even more produce if I'd gotten this shot earlier, but this is in October what our farm stand looked like, part of it looked like. This was one of my favorite days on the farm last summer. This was when we had our junior farm crew, and these are teenagers from the Ferguson-Florissant School District, 8 of them, who worked with us on the farm all summer long. This is when they showed off to young people visiting the farm what they had learned about farming. And so this is actually a group of summer campers from St. Louis University's culinary camp. This is India and Destiny demonstrating, showing them some basil and some single tomatoes. And then this is where I really hope that we're going with the local food movement. This is a photo of a taste test that we did with our EarthDance grown sweet potatoes at a local elementary school at New Hallsbury Elementary. And I don't want us to just be doing a single taste test at the elementary school. I want there to be tastes every single day of local produce before they take the test. And I want for it to be like a commonplace thing where instead of the story that we told earlier about 2 young people walking down the sidewalk, of course we would say, no, stranger danger, don't take food from that unmarked van, that they're walking down the street and they see Mrs. Johnson and she's harvesting some tomatoes from her front yard and she says, hey, do you kids want to try these? This is a new variety I'm growing this year. And they remember when they helped her plant that plant back in May, and so they're going to taste those tomatoes because they knew where those came from. So that is what I want to leave you all with, is where I hope that we're going with the local food. Thank you.
We're going to give Molly a chance to enjoy her lunch. We'll hold questions till the end.
You know, Jen, the first thing people always ask me is, how did you get into farming? How did you, of all people, start this farm up and get yourself involved? And especially being a military kid from Panama City, Florida, the closest thing we got is Alabama, lower Alabama right there, and that's mainly woods. So there's not really many cows being produced in that area. But and everything in the ground is all salty, so you're going to get some skinny animals regardless. Come on, even our deer are only like 80 pounds. So it's funny for me to say it, but I started my farm for my 2 horses. When I moved here to Missouri, when I was playing for the Rams in '06, I bought the first piece of property just for my 2 horses. And then I had a smart tax guy who said, you can help yourself out. Just get a couple head of cattle. Well, I went out and I was like, let me just research and figure out what kind of cows I want. Everybody's got Angus, so that's easy. That's the way I think about it. I'm like, no, I want to be different. I want to be a little bit off. That's pretty much how everybody knows. Years and years of getting hit in the head, see this. But, as it came to be, I settled on the British whites, and mainly because I wasn't exactly sure what direction I wanted to go, but I know that first of all, it's a beautiful animal. to be. And secondly, it was also known as a very well-known crossbreeder and dual-purpose breed. So that's when I moved into actually starting and looking and saying, okay, the British whites are where I want to be. So I went out to go get these cattle, and I came home with 16. So, yeah, went a little bit overboard, as I tend to do with everything in general. And I came back with these 16 cattle, and I said, guess I better start figuring this one out. It's kind of led me down a great path, though. It's led me to into many different avenues and many different facets of not only agricultural lifestyle, but also just the health and well-being of community and the nation in general. I mean, I look at it, and I've talked to many, many different restaurateurs, producers, distributors, people, and it's amazing to see what this farm has allowed me to touch out to. We talk about, Molly was talking about her political. Well, I've spoken in front of Congress just about the subtherapeutic use of antibiotics in livestock, how detrimental that is to us. And the woman who actually heads up that bill and is trying to keep pushing it forward, Representative Slaughter, who, by the way, if you guys ever get to meet her, she's a descendant of Daniel Boone. She will tell you that right out, flat in a hurry. When I first met her, she was up walking 3 months early from a broken femur, and she's 86 years old. So she is very, how would I put that? Stern in her approach in what she needs. But a few people don't realize that she also has a background in genetics. So she has a very clear understanding of what we could potentially be putting ourselves into. Here's a little video, though, that we're going to show you just to give you a little quick view of Shire Gate. And actually, the great part about this is it's actually about the right time of year for this video to show up. Everybody's always looked at me and said, man, you started this farm and did this. And when I first bought the property, you want to talk about vision? I had to have a lot of vision, and a whole lot of vision. I bought the first 185 acres. Nobody lived on the property in 10 years. Even the house, it was just something to just get ready and get my farm manager into, just to start that. But I was seeing a longer-term vision for it, not only just for a place for my family to get away and to enjoy it. The number one thing we all said, I think the average person, especially in this room today, we're sitting with at least 3 clocks next to us. Out there, it's pretty much rise at the sun and go to bed when it's dark, right? So it makes life a lot easier for us all. But I put that aside. When I go out for a weekend and just enjoy myself with the kids, that's been a part of it. That's what it is. That's how great, having this family farm has been to me. It's something that, as I've talked about in the video, it's disappearing. Molly just mentioned, we're going to lose 1 million acres. That's alarming. Absolutely alarming. And more so, one of the things that I got involved in and just steadily kind of get involved in is when I go out and speak to kids, when we go out and talk about things, and, kids want to know what you do besides football sometimes. So when I start talking about my farm, I just ask kids sometimes, what do you do? Well, I have a farm. Well, okay, what do you do out there? Well, it got pretty concerning to me when I asked kids and said, hey, well, where's your chicken come from? And they said, Publix. And I was like, whoa, let's take it. I was like, maybe I got the first step. I said, let's take it one more step. And the next thing that they said was, the freezer. I said, oh boy. So now, it was really this disconnect of where kids were understanding what things were getting to their plate and how they were getting to their plate, and more importantly, the way that they were getting to their plate. Time and time again, we've gotten to see that factory farming is at an alarming level. If it's not even listed on the U.S. Census anymore, what kind of job are you really in? Is it supposed to exist? Just because it's not on the census? No. It's actually been something that has been a founding portion of this country, I think. And it's set many, many families in the right direction and also show people what it's like to be neighbors. I think a lot of times we live so clustered in the city, we forget what that's like. We forget what it's like to lend someone a hand. It's also taught us, the health and wellness of it. And there's nothing like actually going out in your own yard or going to your neighbor's yard and helping them pick something, and you've got something, you guys are trading something up. Or I've got neighbors out there that make some amazing jams, jellies, old school, 200-year-old root cellars. And one of my neighbors, I'm still trying to convince him to let me buy his Model T truck that his dad owned, because really it'd be an awesome little piece to have. I don't really care about the truck, the value. I just really think it'd be a great farm piece to have. But to think about, like, if you had, this old Model T truck pulling up, and there it is, loaded with vegetables, and here you go, and we can do all these great things. So we have to try and figure out a way to make sure we keep all that connected. EarthDance has done a great job, and Molly and I have actually worked together in the past, because I've donated some product to them to put together an event. That's been amazing. That's been great. I've had the ability now to go out and speak to other farmers and try and bring them forward. The group that certifies my farm, a lot of farmers I've found didn't want to go the organic route because grass-fed truly is the Wild West. When I got into it, it was really the Wild West. When you talk about grass-fed beef, there's grass-fed grain finished. There's grass-fed fully forage finished. There's grass-fed that's called grass-fed that's been given a little bit of grain at some point in time, but finished on grain or grass, because then we can call it grass-fed. Then there is, I don't know if we call it grass-fed because it's finished on grain, because it's given that much, only this much percentage of grain with the grass, because now it all averages out as grass. So, can anybody figure that out? Because if you can, raise your hand and tell me, and I'm in the A lot of people actually ask me in the video, aren't you feeding your cattle grain in the video? No. I actually took the time to produce my own, forage-based mix of compressed pellets that are just for my, that I just buy for my cattle. And that's part of what their winter feed is. It allows me to spend a little less on hay in the winter, but also allows me to keep the gains of protein levels up. It's, putting the science in it. People ask me all the time, why do you put so much into this? One, because I love it. I wouldn't do it if I didn't love it. Two, my kids love it. There we go. That's two parts right there. The rest doesn't matter, right? So we've got that going. But the other part is, again, to keep something alive that's been part of culture, part of tradition, part of what we need to maintain a healthy lifestyle. Like I said in the video, Shire Gates beef is just the beginning. This year, I'm trying to decipher if I want to put an apiary out there, probably start at my house and put one out there first and really kind of get my feet wet. Probably doing a greenhouse, always looking at trying to be sustainable in what I produce. This year I bought 10 different types of vertical vegetable gardening programs, and just to try and see which one I like best. So that's pretty crazy, because people don't look at it and say, you're going to buy what? Well, guess what? I got land, I've got a little spare cash on the side, put them together, and you've got experimentation all the time. So it's great. That's what I love about it. Is sometimes you gotta figure things out, but the knowledge that can be lost, it's sad. It's disheartening to me that it's almost a loss of art to find a good blacksmith, because now people aren't understanding what it's like to really have to make a horseshoe. They buy a standard size, they may heat it up a little and get it done. I actually take my Shires to the Amish, because I respect the fact that they take the time to build the shoe, to watch and build the shoe to fit the horse. Because just like us, everything's a little bit different. I also respect the time that they put into the earth, into the soil, into the people of their community. That's another part of it. We've all got to do the same thing. I wish I had more time to be more involved, even in the agricultural business and in all these agricultural clubs. This club specifically, it's hometown. I will say I achieved one amazing feat this year, and something that was a little ahead of what I even thought I may have done or had the ability to do. This year, when I was, coming in to work for the Rams, working for their media, doing the RBN network and setting things aside, it's not often that you get the team president to go, hey, you know what? I know you own this ranch. How'd you feel about serving hot dogs and burgers in the stadium? Yes. Am I supposed to say no? I said, we can figure it out, but yes. That's where I was sitting there. And that was a great move, because one, it showed that the movement is real. It showed that people really want to find products closer to their local market. I also spoke at the Green Sports Alliance. We're talking about an event that's 3,000 people throughout the course of several days. I've spoken to the head of the Portland Trailblazers, who source almost all of their products within 90 miles of their facility, feeding the team. When I was in Philadelphia, I've spoken to Mr. Lurie, talking to him. He's really wanted to bring things there. Here in St. Louis, there's plenty of times where we've had steak dinners, and it's amazing to see my teammates go, "Man, this is great steak." I'm like, "Yeah." I just say nothing to them, and then afterwards they really like, "Man," they asked Sean, our chef, like, "Where do we get this meat?" And point to me over there, and they go, "How'd you do that?" But guys are health conscious too, and it's a great thing to know again that it's spreading more rapidly and rampantly, and there is a fever pitch, realistically, of people trying to get locally sourced goods, locally sourced products, trying to understand, even how they can contribute and make that better. CSAs are one thing, going directly to farmers is one thing. I had a vision one time to try and help other farmers grow, and I looked at it when I first started and said, "You know what, let's build a brand. Let's do something that we could grow out and pull other farmers along and empower them to do great things." I've changed that vision a little bit, because to do it right, you've got to start with the farmers that are localized and work your local market. And then you expand and go out from there to help empower them. Because to me, Shire is not about being extremely profitable. Yeah, let it pay for itself, make a little on the side so my farm manager gets a bonus every year. I don't care, that's fine. I'm totally happy with that. I can go out, enjoy myself, and do what I need to do. That's the goal. But beyond that, whose lives is it affecting? Who else can you be a positive, spot in the dark for? And through AWA, I've gotten to work with so many different farmers. When I first joined AWA, I was one of the first 2 or 3 farmers in Missouri. Again, we talk about the expenditure that people think that it takes to be organic. AWA will certify, and every year come out and do an annual, recheck of everything. Go through your books, check everything over for you, and to every farmer that does it costs them no money. They're self-endowed, run off of a very large endowment by a woman who really loves animals. So they take that moment, they take that forward and push it forward to every farmer. There are now in Missouri, now 56 farms that are AWA certified. And I know, talking to Andrew, there I think are about 10 more that are working to be certified or in pre-certification ideas. That's great. For there to be 1 or 2 when I started several years ago, and there are 50 now, and now that, let's talk about what they do across the country. They don't do that just here. They do it across the country, and there are thousands of farmers who they touch every day. That gives us a great system of individuals to work with. Again, taking everything forward, not just one farmer at a time, but trying to take the whole movement forward. And they stress localization. They stress how to, love thy neighbor and work independently as yourself. It allows us to all work together. I can look up anything you guys may ask for in product. I'm sure I can find somebody. They actually just put in a new statement out of, how many people have ever seen Food Inc.? Okay. Michael Polian, great guy. How many remember the chicken lady in that video? The lady who was just so struck on Purdue and didn't know what she was going to do, and she felt like she was under, right? She didn't know what to do. They helped her transition to an AWA farmer. She is now one of the largest organic and sustainably raised egg farmers in the U.S. Kind of amazing from a woman who felt like she was under the foot of a large corporation and didn't know what she was going to do. And actually, she's putting out, she's doing several other services now and writing, she's writing a great story and a great book, I think, at this point, as to how she did it and what allowed her to have the strength to do it. Because she was very fearful. And that's another thing we face with many farmers. The average grass-fed producer only produces 3 to 4 beef a year. They don't know how to grow. They don't know how to do that. They don't have that understanding of how they can grow a brand. Again, coming together as a whole, they can do that. This is what we must do. must encourage farmers to work together. We must encourage everyone to work for a farmer. I mean, the kids that are doing the EarthDance, you probably won't find a better group of kids that I can say, hey, you know what? They want to learn something new. I got something to come out and hang out in the summer. Totally fine. Doors are open, gates are open. Bring your mom and dad. I don't care. We've got it. We'll figure that out. But this room right here is a great start to that. The minds in this room and the people in this room and the outreach you have, I gotta say again, thank you for even letting you be here to speak about this. But I look forward to what we can do and what we will do as a whole and working together. Thank you.
All right, Matt.
Well, your work with young farmers, I think, is absolutely fascinating. What is the makeup of a typical participant in your program? Are they employed? Are they part? I mean, what does a typical person look like who goes through your program?
That's a great question, and there is no typical, I guess, is the answer. That's actually one thing I think is a real strength of the program, is that it brings so many folks together who, many of whom would never otherwise have met had they not joined the apprenticeship and, been learning how to efficiently weed a bed of carrots across the bed from each other. So we've had as young as, we actually had a McClure South Berkeley high school student who was 15 at the time, Brian Scott. Now he's at Truman, majoring in agricultural science, really excited about that. Enroll in the program. We actually were surprised because he was already a very active, busy, 3-season sports kind of guy, but he made the time for it, and he was one of the few people who said he wished he would have been asked to work harder at the farm. And then we've also had a woman who is a retired middle school teacher from Ferguson Middle School, who was 64 when she did the program, and she was worried about enrolling because she didn't know if she, would be fast enough to keep up with everybody. So, we have a real diversity of ages, of backgrounds. We have a lot of folks. It's been interesting, actually. In 2010, we seem to have more apprentices who actually were unemployed, and I think, of course, due to the economy, who were looking at a career change option. Whereas now we do have probably a younger set of apprentices who are in their late 20s, mid 20s, and are looking at this as their first career option.
I was about to say, our partnership's pretty easy. She called my farm manager, Deanna said, hey, and I said, yeah. It didn't take much more. As far as cultivating how to take that forward and get people moving, I think you have a great positioning right now. That she's doing great things, and I think that's only going to grow. It's in Ferguson itself right now, with all the turmoil and everything that's been going and surrounded about that, that's like, again, a beacon of light that shows the community is in a place. It has a place. It has a core and a value. I think that's where it begins. As far as facilitating how the partnership can grow or how we can grow it, that's called just ask and I'll work on figuring it out. Like I don't have a question there. And as far as you guys can help us, spread the word, speak. I think that works well for me.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is just making the invitation, making the ask to begin, and then I also think looking towards the overall ideology being one of empowerment versus, I'm coming in with my own agenda. If you're actually sitting at the same table and you're actually seeing the other as an equal, I think is a big part of it in terms of our motives operandus.
And also, I want to ask you, you guys talk about organic, and what a lot of people think that means local grown, but most of it is imported. How do you differentiate those two things?
You want to start with yours? I can talk forever.
So that's a really great question about a lot, and that actually has been pointed to in studies that a lot of farmers market shoppers assume that because it's something that they are finding at a local farmers market that it is grown organically. And while that tends to be the case, that's not always the case. I think with regards to the amount of food that we're importing, I think that's a testament to the consumer demand for organic. I think while I would love for all of our organic food to be grown domestically, overall, even beyond organic, we're a net importer of food. We're actually importing more food to this country than we are exporting. So we need to first look at how can we create our own self-sufficiency models with regards to our food supply, which organic is certainly a big component of that, and I hope an increasing component.
And that type of thing. But can we feed, the world is supposed to be 9 billion by 2050. Can we feed all of those people, quote, organically?
Cattle prices are exorbitant right now. If I'm going to buy calves, I'm going, holy cow. Literally. And then you sit there and wonder, how am I supposed to get this to your plate at a value you still want to pay for? Because I know if you're looking right now, you can look up the USDA's reports. Average, just whole tenderloin price at a wholesale price is $19.95 to about $29.95. $19.95 is pretty much a lot closer to where we are in the country in the Midwest. $22.95 in the wholesale department. So that means by the time you're getting to the plate, you're $35, $45 a pound. How many people can really do that?
I would say, with regards to Can Organic Feed the World, yes. In fact, I think it's the only way that we're going to feed the world, not necessarily only with certified organic, but only with more sustainable operations than we're currently seeing exist. And the UN actually did a study about it, and I think the fact that we're not currently feeding everyone who already lives on this planet with our current system of agriculture is testament to the fact that, you know, there's some things that need to change, and not all of it is rooted in agriculture. I think a lot of what needs to change is in consumer preference and consumer habits. It's in not just talking about, you know, the price of meat. It's talking about, well, maybe we don't need to eat as much meat as we're currently eating. Now, don't get me wrong, I actually love beef, but I do eat a more plant-centered diet because that's what's going to not only keep me healthy, but that's healthier on the pocketbook. You know, I'd rather pay more for high-quality products and then diversify my diet with more locally farm-raised products than continuing a lifestyle that this earth just cannot sustain. So, thank you.
All right, and with that, we're going to say thank you to everyone, and thank you to our speakers.